Amy Muldoon, who is the Communication Workers of America member at Verizon and the shop steward in New York City. She writes, the strike of 39,000 union members at Verizon in April and May got an invigorating boost from the attention that Bernie Sanders brought to it with his presidential campaign. But the strike, in turn, contributed something critical to the discussion of socialism that Sanders helped open up: class struggle. The Sanders campaign highlighted the progressive role that government could play in curtailing corporate greed and closing the wealth gap. But our strike showed how ordinary people could directly confront and stop the boss's assault on our living standards. Since the strike, I've had the opportunity to speak to multiple audiences about how and why we were able to win. What I've seen is a serious interest in class politics, especially from young people who form the heart of the Sanders demographic. However, people coming to politics today don't have the experience or exposure to strike and class struggle that earlier generations did. Unfortunately, there isn't a wave of copycat strikes that can push a discussion forward about class power as the avenue for challenging the bosses and politicians that work for them. I don't think the radicalizations that drove the Sanders campaign will evaporate, but it could go off in many different directions. Within the labor movement, the pointless loyalty to the Democrats is as thick as ever at the national leadership level. My union, the Communication Workers of America, was probably the largest labor organization to endorse Sanders. There was widespread support for Sanders, some of it very enthusiastic. The feeling that finally someone was talking class politics and actually walking the walk inspired more interest in the election than I've seen in years. Since Clinton won the nomination, I've seen a lot of frustration with the attitude coming from the leadership and liberal forces everywhere that we have to vote for Clinton. More politically savvy members see voting for Clinton as a short-term step in a longer fight to turn the Democrats back into a so-called party of the people. I doubt Clinton will have any kind of honeymoon, given how disliked she is pre-election, assuming she becomes president. The strike and the Sanders campaign raised people's expectations, and I don't think you can put that genie back in the bottle. The nomination process may have blunted some of the optimism that the campaign inspired, but it sharpened the anger and clarity among a portion of Bernie's supporters. Unfortunately, the unions tend to be some of the most loyal adherents to the Democratic Party machine. Rumor has it that unions left the Working Families Party in New York after the Communication Workers of America endorsed Sanders, even though Sanders voted with the Democratic Party line as an independent in the Senate more than many formal party members. There has been a wave of leadership changes across local unions in the past 5 years. But the Democrats are still hegemonic, even among reformers. Assuming Clinton wins, she could expect a rocky term of office. Will the union sit on the sidelines during protests? When, not if, the Trans-Pacific Partnership economic deal is approved, how will unions react? We can't answer these questions today. But we know the dissatisfaction with establishment politics that was exposed during the Sanders campaign lives on. Within the labor movement, this inevitably raises questions not only about the status quo in formal politics, but organizing the unorganized and negotiating contracts. Raised expectations can turn into real change if the left continues to transmit the lessons of actions like the Verizon strike to the broadest audience. I think what Amy Muldoon wrote is probably the closest to realpolitik than anything else that I shared with you tonight so far. Because Amy Muldoon walked the walk. And I think a lot of theoreticians on the left, this is the way it's always been. A lot of the people who come up with the statements and the papers, the Port Huron statement, the this, the that, this manifesto, that manifesto, are engaging in something that is it just doesn't translate into real action. It reads nice. It's very revolutionary sounding. But what happens with the application? What's been your experience? You're listening to this podcast. What's been your experience? You think I'm full of shit? I keep asking for examples to counter what I'm saying. If you feel like taking the time, do it. If you don't, fuck it. You know, it really doesn't matter because this podcast is just what it is, which is pretty much very, very, very limited. And like I've said for the past 15 years, who cares? Who cares about what is said here?